Hi guys, it's Jasmine again, and today I will be reading The Revolutionary War on Wednesday from the Magic Treehouse series by Mary Pope Osborne and illustrated by Sal Mordaka. Prologue. One summer day in Frog Creek, Pennsylvania, a mysterious treehouse appeared in the woods. 8-year-old Jack and his 7-year-old sister Annie climbed into the treehouse. They found that it was filled with books. Jack and Annie soon discovered that the treehouse was magic. It could take them to the places in the books. All they had to do was point to a picture and wish to go there. Along the way, Jack and Annie discovered that the treehouse belongs to Morgan Le Fay. Morgan is a magical librarian from Camelot, the long-ago kingdom of King Arthur. She travels through time and space, gathering books. In the Magic Treehouse books 5 through 8, Jack and Annie helped free Morgan from a spell. In books 9 through 12, they solved 4 ancient riddles and became master librarians. In Magic Treehouse books 13 through 16, Jack and Annie had to save 4 ancient stories from being lost forever. In Magic Treehouse books 17 through 20, Jack and Annie freed a mysterious little dog from a magic spell. In Magic Treehouse books 21 through 24, Jack and Annie have a new challenge. They must find 4 special kinds of writing for Morgan's library to help save Camelot. They are about to set off to find the second of these. Chapter 1, Wednesday. "Wake up, Jack," Annie whispered. Jack opened his eyes. He looked at his clock. It was 6 a.m. "Come on," Annie whispered. She was standing at his bedroom door, already dressed. "Now?" said Jack. "Yeah, it's Wednesday. We have to go to the treehouse," she said. "Oh man, Wednesday," said Jack. Suddenly, he was wide awake. "We have to help save Camelot," said Annie. I know," said Jack, scrambling out of bed. "Meet you out front," said Annie. Jack quickly changed into his jeans and t-shirt. He threw his notebook and pencil into his backpack. Then he slipped down the stairs and out the front door. Annie was waiting in the gray early light. "All set?" she whispered. "Yep," said Jack. They took off running across their yard. They ran down their quiet street and into the Frog Creek woods. Soon they came to the treehouse. They climbed up the rope ladder. In the early light, they saw Morgan's note, the same note they found on Sunday. Jack picked it up and read aloud. "Dear Jack and Annie, Camelot is in trouble. To save the kingdom, please find 4 special kinds of writing for my library. Something to follow, something to send, something to learn, something to lend. Thank you, Morgan." Annie picked up a piece of paper lying on the floor. It was a list of rules from the famous nurse, Clara Barton. They had met her on their journey to the Civil War. "On Sunday, we found the first special writing," said Annie. "Something to follow." "Yeah," said Jack. "And now we need to find the second thing, something to send." He picked up a book lying near the note. The cover showed soldiers on a snowy riverbank. The title was The Revolutionary War. Jack frowned. "Uh-oh," said Annie. "Another war," said Jack, sighing. "You still want to go?" said Annie. "We have to," said Jack. He hated the suffering he'd seen in the Civil War. But they had no choice. They had to help Morgan and save Camelot. He pointed at the cover of the book. "I wish we could go there," said Jack. The wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 2, Day or Night? Jack shivered. The wind blew hard. "It's cold," he said. He could see his breath in the air. Wrap your scarf tighter, said Annie. Jack looked down. He had a wool scarf around his neck. He was also wearing woolen pants that buttoned at the knees, a coat, and a hat with 3 corners. On his feet were funny-looking shoes with buckles. In place of his backpack was a leather bag. Annie was wearing a long coat over a dress. Jack pulled his scarf tighter. Then he looked out the window with Annie. They'd landed in a tree near an icy river. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds. It's almost day, or almost night. I can't tell, said Annie. Yeah, I hope it's almost day, said Jack. I wonder where we'll find something to send, said Annie. Jack shrugged. First, we have to find the Revolutionary War, he said. He opened their research book. By the gray light, he read, over 200 years ago, the United States was made up of 13 colonies, ruled by Britain. From 1775 until 1782, American patriots fought for independence from Britain. This was called the Revolutionary War. Jack took out his notebook. He wrote, American patriots fight for independence from Britain. Jack turned the page. There was a picture of soldiers in red uniforms. He read aloud, during the Revolutionary War, British soldiers wore red uniforms. For this reason, they were called redcoats. Jack wrote in his notebook, British equals redcoats. Wow, snow, said Annie. Jack looked up from his writing. Annie was holding her hand out the window. A few snowflakes blew into the treehouse. Not much yet, said Jack, but we'd better find the special writing soon. Well, stop reading and come on, said Annie. She buttoned up her coat and started down the ladder. Okay, said Jack. He packed the research book and his notebook into his bag. Then he followed Annie. When they stepped onto the ground, there were more snow flurries. The sky was growing darker. I'm afraid it's almost night instead of day, said Jack. Yeah, said Annie, looking around. Hey, look, people. She pointed up the river. In the misty distance, there was a campfire. Several men sat around the fire. They all held muskets. Maybe they can help us, said Annie. She started away, but Jack grabbed her. Wait, I think they're soldiers, he said. They have muskets. Remember the muskets from the Civil War? The guns that the soldiers carried? Oh yeah, said Annie. They might be redcoats, said Jack. Let's sneak closer and get a better look at their uniforms. Quick, said Annie, before it's too dark to see. Chapter 3. It's time. Annie lifted up her long dress and ran to a tree close to the river. Jack held on to his hat and ran after her. They peeked out from behind the tree. More snow flurries swirled in the twilight. Redcoats, whispered Annie. I can't tell, said Jack. In the flickering firelight, the men didn't seem to be wearing uniforms at all. They wore ragged pants and coats. Some even had their feet wrapped in tattered cloth. Come on, said Annie. She ran to a tree closer to the river. Jack followed. This is as close as we should get, he whispered. But we still can't tell what they're wearing, said Annie. She crept forward and hid behind a scraggly bush. No, closer, Jack whispered, but Annie took off again. She crouched behind a rock. She was only about 10 feet from the campfire. Oh, brother, she's way too close now, Jack thought. But he took a deep breath and ran to the rock. When he joined Annie, she looked at him and grinned. This is like hide and seek, she whispered. It's not a game, Annie, Jack whispered back. It's war. Be serious. I am serious, said Annie, her voice rising. Shh, said Jack. But it was too late. One of the men stood up and looked around. What's the matter, Captain? Another asked. I heard something, said the captain. He held up his musket. Jack stopped breathing. Who's there? The captain shouted. Jack looked at Annie. She shrugged. "We're caught," she whispered. "Who's there?" the captain shouted again. "Just two kids," Annie answered in a small voice. "Come out and show yourselves," the captain said. Jack and Annie stood up from behind the rock. They both held up their hands. "We come in peace," said Annie. In the shadowy twilight, the captain moved toward them. "Who are you?" he asked. "We are Jack and Annie," said Annie. "Why were you spying on us?" he asked. "We weren't spying," said Jack. "We just wanted to know if you were redcoats or patriots." "Which would you like us to be?" the shadowy figure asked. "Patriots," said Jack. "We are patriots," the captain said. "Thank goodness," said Annie. The captain smiled. "Where are you from?" he asked. His voice had softened. "We're visiting relatives nearby," Jack said. "Frog Creek, Pennsylvania," said Annie at the same time. "But that's amazing," the captain said. "My farm is in Frog Creek." "Where is your farm?" Jack didn't know how to answer. "It's near the Frog Creek woods," said Annie. "All farms are near woods," the man said with a laugh. "What?" Just then, someone called up from the river. "It's time, Captain." The captain turned to the other men near the campfire. "It's time," he repeated. The soldiers quickly put out their fire. They stood with their muskets on their shoulders. "Time for what, Captain?" Annie asked. "Time to meet up with our commander-in-chief," he said. "Return to your family now, so your mother and father don't worry about you." "Yes, sir," said Jack. "It's nice to see children," the captain said. "I was just trying to write a letter to my own son and daughter. I didn't know what to say." "Tell them that you miss them," said Annie. The man smiled. "And I do indeed," he said softly. Then he turned and headed up the river bank. His ragged men followed behind. Soon they all disappeared into the cold mist. Jack looked around. The wind was blowing harder. The snow was sticking to the ground. "What now?" he asked. More than anything, he wanted to go back home. With the soldiers gone, the riverbank felt lonely and scary. "We still have to find something to send," said Annie. "I know," said Jack. "Maybe we should just follow the captain and his men," said Annie. "They might lead us to something." Jack wasn't sure that was a good idea, but he didn't have a better one. "Okay, but let's try not to get caught this time," he said. He and Annie took off through the frozen twilight, following the snowy footprints of the American patriots. That's all for today. Bye, guys.